but rather they are inspired readings based on the theme of the prayer. And this prayer, Ma'ariv Aravim, is a prayer that is in all evening services, and it is a prayer to demarcate the time. Evening is upon us, so let's read together in English at the bottom of 148. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzebaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Baruch atah Adonai, Ma'ariv Aravim. Page 150, we read at the bottom of page 151 together. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Yisrael. Shema, listen. For the Shema this evening, we will sing it with the regular melody 3 times. Only the first line 3 times. In Hebrew. I would like everyone in the room to pick one of those 3 times to not sing, but to only listen to the Hebrew, to the people around you, and just Shema, just listen. So we'll do it 3 times. Everyone pick one of those 3 times to only listen. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem, Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Page 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'eleh asher Anochi metzavecha hayom ha'levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibartam v'shivtecha b'beitecha u'v'lechtecha b'derech u'shachlecha u'v'mecha u'shartam le'od al-yadecha ve'hayu letotafot b'neinecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'b'isharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim le'Elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hoseti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim li'yot lachem Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem emet. We continue responsively on page 157 at the bottom. Responsively. In a world torn by violence and pain, in a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth.
The high heavens declare your glory, and the earth reveal your justice on what?
From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way.
Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, Time and again we overcame oppressive forces.
Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed.
Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea.
On page 160, when we sing Hashkivenu together for the melody that I'll just call the Daniel melody because I don't actually know who wrote it, and I know that Daniel was the one who introduced it here, so I think we can all safely call it the Daniel melody. I have noticed that everyone knows where the words are for the first part, the Hashkivenu, Adonai, Eloheinu, Shalom, etc., etc. But it does not seem like people know where the words are in the second part, which is very easy to understand because they're randomly somewhere in the middle of the page. So if you look down the margin, the indented 3 lines towards the bottom, Ushmor Tseitenu, Voenu, L'chaim, L'shalom, Me'ata V'ad Olam, those are the words in the B section. So if you know the melody and you're looking for those words, that's where they are. They're in the section. This is going to be the B section. Continuing on, page 162. Asadonai, et Hashamayim, Page 164. Please rise. Adonai sefatai uvia gita ilateta. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, 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 Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagel Hagibor Ha'adorah, El Elyon, Gomel Hasadim Tovim, Gomel Yaakov, V'zocher Masei Yaakov V'imavot, U'bevi Gudon V'bnei Bneihem, Le'man Shmuel Ve'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Mashiach U'Mayin, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah. 168. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mekayem HaKol HaMoshiach, Mori Atah, Mechapel Chaim B'Chesed, Mekayem HaKol Le'rachamim, Somer Noflim V'Rofei Olim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Mikamo Chacham Mikorot, Umidom Elah, Melech Memit Umchayei, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'emat Ha'olachayot Nanu, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayei Ha'ayim. Atah Kadosh V'Shimcha Kadosh, U'Kadashim Kol Yom Echadedus Ha'Selah. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Please be seated. On the top of page 173, may these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Kadesh Hashavat. Page 175. Ritzei, Ritzei, Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'amcha Yisrael, U'tefilatam, Ve'ahava tekabel, U'tehi l'ratzon tamid, U'tehi l'ratzon tamid, Avodat Yisrael Amecha, Baruch Baruch atah Adonai, she'otecha levadecha, v'yirat ha'od. She'otecha levadecha, v'yirat ha'od. Page 176. We read together on the top of page 177. Top of 177. Please join me. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us, and for all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, Hatov Shimcha U'Pam Naden Lahodot. Page 178. Shalom Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Le'olam. Ki atah hu melech Adon, Lechol HaShalom. Ki atah hu melech Adon, Lechol HaShalom. Shalom Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Le'olam. V'tov einecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael, b'chol leinu v'chol shah, b'shlomecha. Shalom Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Le'olam. Tasim Le'olam. Tasim Le'olam. We now take a few moments for silent prayer. May the words of my mouth
of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen.
Please rise for Seder Kriyat HaTorah on page 365. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, u'devar Adonai Yerushalayim. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosho. Gadol Adonai iti, unerom b'mashemo yachdav. Adonai hagedula, hagevura, hatiferet, hanetzach kavod. Ki chova shamayim u'haaretz, ki chova shamayim u'haaretz. Adonai hamamlecha, yamid na'aseh lechol rosh. Shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, haolam omein. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, haolam omein. Al Torah ve'al avodah ve'al gemilut hasadim. Al Torah ve'al avodah ve'al gemilut hasadim. Unlike my last visit, which was a tour portion filled with very nasty skin diseases and bodily fluid rules, this is one of the true gems in Leviticus, Parshat Behar. It involves, or it contains the verse that is inscribed on our Liberty Bell, chapter 25, verse 10, "You shall proclaim liberty throughout the land." And it also contains verses that are very environment-centric for an agricultural community, involving the sabbatical laws for resting the land every 7th year. And that is the beginning of the portion, and those are the verses that we will be reading today. It's at the beginning of chapter 25 of Leviticus.
Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol hamim, ונתן לנו את תורתו, ברוך אתה אדוני, נותן התורה.
Amen.
Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe b'har Sinai, Lemor daber el bnei Yisrael, ve'amarta alechem, ki tavo'u el haaretz asher ani noten lechem, v'shavta haaretz Shabbat l'Adonai. Sheish shanim tizra sadecha, v'sheish shanim tizmor karmecha, ve'asafta et tevuata. Uvashana hashvi'i Shabbat Shabbaton Yehiyeh la'aretz. Shabbat l'Adonai. Sadcha lo tizra, v'charmcha lo tizmor. Et sfiach ketzircha lo tizor. Et an inve nizrecha lo tivsor. Shanat Shabbaton Adonai la'aretz. Yehiyeh la'aretz. V'haita Shabbat ha'aretz lachem la'ochla l'cha ula'avdecha ula'amatcha ul'shachircha ul'toshvecha hagarim imach ul'vahem v'liv hemtecha Ulachaya asher ba'artsecha tehiyeh kol tevuata le'echol. God spoke to Moses at Mount Sinai, and he said to tell the Israelites the following. Tell them that he told Moses to tell the Israelites the following. When the Israelites come into the land which I am giving you, you will rest the land as a Shabbat for Adonai. For 6 years you will plow your fields, and for 6 years you will prune your vineyards, and you will gather in all the produce. But on the 7th year, it will be a true Shabbat for the land, a Shabbat for Adonai. You will not sow your fields, and you will not prune your vineyards. And further, this isn't really translated all into English, but the stuff that grows naturally in your fields during the sabbatical year, you will not harvest it. And the grapes that grow naturally in your vineyards without being tended during the sabbatical year, you will not harvest them either. Because it will be a true Shabbat for the land. So, during that Shabbat, during the sabbatical year, you will eat the following. You, including your male servants, your female servants, your employees, those that reside within your house, and anyone who lives with you. You will be able to eat as sustenance the food that grows naturally without being tended during that year. But you can't harvest it, only eat it.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'kayolam nata b'tokenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Thank you very much. Now, hold on, Ann, because I slipped my mind to call her up in the Hebrew. So instead of calling her up, I'm going to call her down. So instead of ta'amod, which means stand up, it will be Teshvi, which is upside down. Teshvi, Hanabat Abraham Vesara. Thank you very much. And I now would like to invite Philip up to raise the Torah for Hagba, which is on page. Oh no, wait, sorry. Just have a seat. That was totally my fault. I'm not, trying to get Philip to perform any sort of kinesthetics or anything. As the Torah is out and among us, this is the moment that we take during the service to think of those in our community who are sick or ill or are in need of healing, body or mind or spirit. So if you are thinking of someone who you would like to share their name with our community that could use some healing, please share their name as my eyes meet yours.
Nan Gartenberg. Susan Mark Landis.
Paul Sweetor.
Please join me in Misha Berach on page 371. Misha Berach Avotenu Bekor Avraham Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheverach imotenu v'kor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Now, Philip, I would like to invite you up to the Hagba and ask the congregation to please rise. V'zot HaTorah asher zar Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael ki Adonai v'yad Moshe yai lai 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 la whenever I think of the sabbatical year, I think of one of the biggest characters I met when I was living in Israel. He is an Arab apple farmer who I ran into when I was backpacking across the Golan. And his family was of Syrian descent, but he had been living in Israel. I think his children were the third generation citizens, Israeli citizens. And the only common language we had was Hebrew, and his was way, way better than mine. I mean, it was his vernacular. And it was actually during the sabbatical year in Israel. And certain vineyards in Israel, if you want to be considered kosher, do not harvest or tend their fields during the sabbatical year, and you cannot sell them. You can eat off them to live off of, but you cannot harvest it and sell it. And I guess this sabbatical year came up somehow, and I think he brought it up. But he basically said the following. He said, I love the sabbatical year because all the Orthodox Jews buy their apples from me. Because, as a non-Jew himself, the sabbatical laws do not apply to his apple orchards. So, the Torah portion actually begins with two fairly difficult, when you talk about how hard it is to observe a commandment, two pretty difficult commandments to observe. The first one is the sabbatical year, and the second one is the Jubilee year. In the sabbatical year, you have to leave the land alone as a Shabbat for a whole year, not touching it. And as I said, you can feed yourself off the land, you just can't tend it or harvest it. And for the Jubilee year, you actually have a 2-year sabbatical year on the land. So for 2 years, you're not allowed to harvest, you can only eat off of it. And also the Jubilee year, the land plots that had been sold or had moved from the family they were originally belonging to were reordered and returned to their original owners. So I want to come back to focus on the notion of resting the land, providing the land a Shabbat. But for a moment, I want to diverge regarding the reorganization of land ownership in the Jubilee year, because it fits into an aspect of ancient Israelite society that we have discussed frequently in our Saturday morning study group regarding the book of Joshua. The book of Joshua outlines in great detail, there are people sitting here who can tell you the paragraphs and paragraphs they read, in great detail, it outlines the boundaries that God grants to each of the 12 tribes in the book of Joshua. Within each tribe, the land was further divided into clans and then further divided into families. In our last Torah study session, we talked about how great care was taken to maintain family lands through marriages. You actually have women with the right to legally own land in ancient Israel if there are no sons, because they're trying to keep the land within the family. So the Jubilee year, when we put it into the context of the book of Joshua, it essentially reorganizes all of the land back to the original ordination that God mapped out for the Israelites. But the important aspect of all of this is actually the theology behind this system. Because the Israelites don't actually own the land, God owns the land. The commentator Rashi recognizes this. He proclaimed that God's act of creation granted God the inherent right of ownership over heaven and earth. God's ownership of the earth is then what allows God to give land to the people Israel and allows God to take the land away from the people Israel, which was how the original Babylonian exile was understood by the ancients, that God had taken the land away from them just as God had initially given it to them. This is stated very clearly. God's ownership of the land is stated very clearly in our Torah portion in verse 23. The land shall not be sold in perpetuity, for mine, capital M for God, is the land, for you are merely residents within me. In essence, God owns the earth, and we are the stewards of our appointed areas. So going back to the first law, the sabbatical year law, we've been commanded to give the earth a full year of rest every 7th year. it's actually pretty hard to believe that this mitzvah was consistently and perfectly observed in an ancient agricultural civilization that was very dependent on a intricately organized relationship between cities and large agricultural areas. And indeed, the prophets, later on in the Bible, this is one of the things that they outspokenly charge the Israelites of breaking, as they cite the Israelites that they broke the sabbatical year frequently and generally just ignored it. And then, by the time we reach the rabbinic period, the rabbis have already determined that the sabbatical year is inapplicable, since most Jews are now living outside of Israel by the time you hit 200 CE. Now again, the sabbatical year was reintroduced with the modern state of Israel. So, questions present themselves when we reflect on this mitzvah for us. What's the significance that our ancestors were commanded to methodically give the land a true rest? And how is this connected to Judaism's understanding that land belongs to God, and that we are merely the stewards? Well, I would say that we stewards are obliged to treat the land as a sacred trust from its ultimate owner. We must protect it from ruin, keep it fruitful, be able to hand it on to future generations. For too long, though, we have been handing off the earth to future generations in a worse state than the earth was handed off to ourselves. We can be the generation to break this cycle. We can be the generation to be the one that hands the earth off to those who follow us better than it was handed to us. I don't think I need to go into details about how we can achieve this, because the concept of preserving the earth has finally entered our mainstream natural consciousness. We need to move away from fossil fuels and move toward renewable energy resources. We need to reduce consumption of natural resources through reuse and recycling. We must pursue sustainable farming methods that will be both eco-friendly and provide the entire world with sustenance. These are all long-term global goals, but when it comes to our planet, how could it not be global, and how could it not be long-term? Still, we will each do our individual part in our own way. We must be mindful of our environment and our planet in the way we live, in the products we use, and the occupations we pursue. These are obligations for all Americans and for all humanity. And for us, it is our obligation as Jews. We are God's stewards for the earth. We are entrusted with the land, so let's make good on that trust. King Yeh Ratzon, may it be God's will. We continue the closing of our service on page 586, and we rise for Aleinu at the top. Aleinu l'shabeach Adon hakol, l'teinu l'yotzer reshit, she'emunot hashamayim v'yotzer haaretz, u'moshav yikaro b'shamayim v'imam, u'shminatu zot b'karpei meramim, u'Eloheinu ein v'anachnu korim, u'mishtarim u'norim, lifnei melech malchei halavim, hakadosh baruch hu. Page 591. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai v'melech al kol haaretz v'yom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Please be seated. Shannon, what are your words of those announcements?
Anne is trying to organize a picnic on Sunday. So if you want to speak to that for a second, Anne?
There will be Sunday school here, and then after that,
Jim is busy for about an hour, but we would think about 1 o'clock on Sunday and have it be sort of get together, bring salad type things and meet together. I'm thinking just some of the picnic tables over at Al Qual. The other possibility is if we get too squeezed with that, Miners Park, that triangle section in Negaunee where the stone pyramid is would be a second. Yep, there are. Anyway, let's think about that and talk together in a few minutes and see how much interest there is. I realize it's Mother's Day.
You want my milk?
But there may be some of us who will not be honoring mothers, or maybe want to bring mothers along. So think about this. It's getting to be that season of the year. It's just pleasant and could be a good time.
Excellent. Food for thought during the ONA. What else?
We will also be having our final service in 2 weeks on Memorial Weekend, so hopefully you can join us for that. And for anybody who isn't aware yet, Jim will be returning next year, so we are grateful to have him returning to us.
I'm very happy to come back, actually.
And it's my understanding there's still adult study tomorrow?
Yeah, adult study tomorrow in Peter White. This is the first time. So we're in Peter White tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. Sunday school, Sunday morning here at 10 o'clock. And that's it for the weekend. Roz is downstairs, but Roz and Ron are the ONEG providers for tonight. So when you eat delicious things downstairs, think of them. With that, we turn to page 598 in our prayer books. As our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. Please rise.
Tonight we remember Donald J. Levine, Leon Lee Harris Courtney, Samuel B. Lowenstein, Celia E. Lowenstein, Manny Wolf, Clara Ornofsky Mannon. Heather Cahotis Frank, Alice G. Cooperstock, Philip H. Stein, Richard Fogel, James L. Rapport, Cindy Kukla, William Arnold, Voivel Ben Daniel, Pa Bohami.
To those named to Anne.
Morris Sundar.
Page 598. Yitkada Shemei Rabba, Ba'alma Dibra Yurute V'yamlif Malchute, V'yakon V'yamechon, V'yed V'oved Israel, Ba'agaha V'yizman Karik V'yamlif, Yehi Shemei Rabba M'lei Alaya, Yiparach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shemei Nikudashah V'yiklu, Le'elam Yinko Birchata V'shirata, Tushbechata V'nechemata, Ta'aviran B'mama V'yimru Amen. Yehi Shema Rabba Mishmaya, V'chayim Aleinu V'al Yisrael V'yimru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mamav, V'yaseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'yimru Amen. May their memories be a blessing to us, and through us, a blessing to those around us. As we say, Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated. The closing song is on page 627, 626. Ain't Eloheinu, I feel like it hasn't been done in months, which is definitely not okay, because Ein Keloheinu is one of the standards. So please join me on 626. Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Mi Eloheinu, Mi Kadonenu, Mi Kemalkeinu, Mi Kemoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Emalkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. Kavochem l'shalom, Ketzeichem l'shalom. As you came in peace, may you also depart in peace after we go together downstairs for Kiddush and Boneg. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.